Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. Just going to describe myself real quick. I've got brown hair, brown eyes. I've got a headset on. I'm up in my office studio at the Fledge, and I'm wearing a Capital City Film Festival t-shirt. So shout out to them. Hope we get back for year 10 this year. Today on the show, we've got our new friend, Allan. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good.
So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I guess I should describe myself. That's one thing I've noticed. Brown skinned fella with long dreads, gray and red farmer sweatshirt on with some headphones hanging over my shirt.
And some cool art in the back. Is that you?
Oh yeah, well, not necessarily me, but me and my wife did a couple of painting with a twist. So, and then there's a piece right there that she bought me that says Roots, and then there's a piece right there that she did. So
yeah, I like it.
Oh yeah.
So thanks for noticing that. That's a nod out to the visually impaired. So we hope we can help a little bit. If you're watching and we say something that we're not describing, we'll try to make sure that that's better. So thanks for doing that. Let's jump into you for a second. Where are you from? Where were you born and raised and go to school in that?
Well, I was actually born and raised Kalamazoo, Michigan. And yeah, basically Kalamazoo, Michigan, graduated from Old Central High School. Technically it was considered Phoenix High School, but moved to Chicago when I was 18, back to Michigan when I was think about 28, 29, 2009, I moved back, and then I met a beautiful woman and gravitated up here to Lansing.
Yeah. Is that your guys' kids in the back? I can't hear them anymore. I could hear them on the pre-show.
Oh no, that's my beautiful wife downstairs working out. She's the fitness nut and I'm the garden nut, which I need to get on some fitness stuff as well, but she's got that taken care of for me.
Yeah. So what'd you do in Chicago?
I was actually in school. I went for fashion design, and that lasted I left Michigan 2000, and I was done with school, unfortunately, in 2001. So I just worked odd jobs, and that was about it. Just living life, having fun, and trying to stay out of trouble.
My daughter went to Loyola for a year, so she was there for a year and then back fairly quickly. But I like Chicago.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a beautiful experience living down there. I can honestly say it turned me in. I mean, I went when I was 18, but I can say it turned me into a man. I learned a whole lot while I was down there, and just overall, it was a blessing being able to be so close to home to where if anything happens, I can come right back and forth. So yeah.
So tell us a little bit about some of your projects you're working on right now. I mean, we kind of know that you're an artist of some sort. I don't know if you do a lot of art.
Well, I am an artist, but right now my focus is on gardening, and that's really I'm a bus driver. I drive for CATA. So, but outside of CATA, I started ROTV Urban Gardens in 2017. And since then, that's been it. I started small home garden in the back. Space started out 10 by 10. And I kind of snuck in extra space because I told my wife I was doing 10 by 10, but the garden was placed in a corner, and I purposely placed it 5 feet from the fence on each side so I would be able to use extra space. So it went from 10 by 10, 2018, it was 15 by 15. And then it went from, I think, 20 by 25, and then we've just expanded from there. And this year we're actually starting a new garden project, which will be on a 1/4 acre at my aunt and uncle's house on the south side. So we're just trying to expand with the garden, and basically my goal is to have a garden in everybody's yard. I mean, whether it's this small or takes up the whole yard, I want y'all to grow something.
I have that same goal. I'm going to love this conversation. That's for sure. So, I look back like in World War II, and I use that term victory gardens. And I see us in like a war on the poor right now, or just everything that's happening with food insecurities. And it's so healthy to garden or farm. Do you consider yourself a gardener or a farmer?
Well, you know what's funny? We just had a conversation about that in a group on Facebook, and in my eyes, the term is interchangeable because simply the definition that I've gotten from different garden podcasts and things of that nature is size doesn't matter. I think the government states that you have to sell $1,000 worth of produce to be considered a farmer, but from what I'm getting from actual farmers, if you're growing food and either selling it or giving it away, it doesn't matter how much you sell, you can consider yourself a farmer. Like I said, when I started, it was 10 by 10. But when I did that 10 by 10, I was giving food away. And even though we're sizing up, I mean, I consider myself a gardener to a certain extent, but I'm farming the land. You never hear anybody say, I'm gonna go garden my land. It's always, no matter what the size is, I'm farming the land. I am, taking care of the land. And so no matter what, if you're growing something and this is just my thoughts, if you're growing something and somebody else is being able to benefit, you can consider yourself a farmer.
I'm in sync with you on that. I think you're spot on from my perspective with the kind of the difference between the two. One's kind of a hobbyist, I think people refer to them, but I don't even see, if you're taking an apple and eating it, you're benefiting, you're farming, you're producing.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe gardeners meant to make people feel less than the farmers or something. I don't know why people try to make that distinction, because we have that conversation a lot too.
Right. And I mean, and even in that conversation that we were having, somebody mentioned homesteader. And I'm thinking, if you really want to compare two different things, you can compare a homesteader versus a gardener or a farmer, because I consider myself a farmer or a gardener. I produce a lot of my own food, but I don't produce enough of my own food, and I'm not that self-sufficient as a gardener to consider myself a homesteader. So now I've grown 30, 40 different type of crops in a year in this small space that I have. So, now when it comes to comparing, I mean, some people would call gardeners hobbyists, but if you're feeding, like I say, if you're feeding your family and other families, whether you're making money or not, because that's even with my goal. I'm not here to sell produce. I want to be able to teach people how to garden, and I want to be able to bless families that may not be able to get, fresh produce. I know Lansing doesn't necessarily have food deserts of sorts of, like the big cities like Chicago and Detroit and different places like that have. And so it's a lot easier to get fresh produce, but a lot of people feel that they can't garden, and a lot of people feel that they don't have access to fresh produce. It's ramen noodles, it's fast food and all these different things, when you could be growing one thing in your yard. And I've been talking about this in a couple other interviews and different, just conversations of food, neighborhood food networks or neighborhood food systems. And for example, there's 13 houses on my block. All of them aren't lived in, but just say, for instance, 10 people on the block decided to grow in a 4x4 space, which is 16 square feet. And everybody grew something different, and we only interchanged between the people on our block. That's 10 different types of fresh produce that is circulating super hyper. I call it super hyper local, because it's like you can reach out and grab it. And so it's just, you don't have to grow a lot, you don't have to have a large space, and it's about growing something.
So a couple of things. One is what's motivating you to do this? Why did you start doing this?
I've been into gardening, well, per se, my whole life. My father was a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer, and not necessarily farming as far as food for other people, but food for our families. And I was born in Kalamazoo, but for the first 6 years of my life, I lived in Mattawan, and I call it Indian country simply because it's native land, and it was beautiful land, and we had like land as far as you could see to a certain extent. But with that being said, it's like, as a kid, okay, yeah, it's cool. We put our hands in the dirt, we mess with the worms, we see the little mealy bugs and, different things like that. But then when you get a little bit older and we moved into Kalamazoo, and it's like, same thing. My father, we had a small yard. Half of the front of the yard was a garden after a while. But I'm coming into my age, I'm coming into myself. I don't want to be out here in the garden. So we were forced to garden per se. And with that, it's like, okay, not necessarily forced. We did have to do it, but the motivation behind it comes from, okay, now realizing as an adult that even though I started the garden before COVID, if you look at COVID and what's going on, or what went on last summer with going to the grocery stores and nothing being on the shelves, if there was actually no way for us to get food, how would we survive? So just gardening in general, it's been in my blood. So that's why I do it. But I'll talk about this in a second. But the projects that I'm working on, it kind of goes back to not necessarily COVID, but it goes back to the food deserts, and it goes back to people not thinking they have the space to garden or the access to fresh food, because it's so much. I mean, it's so much information out here. Like, a lot of people don't realize if you get food stamps, it's a lot easier for you to start a garden than it is for me spending cash, because you can spend your food stamps at the farmers markets. And at the farmers markets, instead of spending like $100 a week per se on produce, you go to the farmers market, you can spend $50 and get $100 a week.
Yeah, it doubles
$100
up.
worth of produce, or you can just spend that $100 and get double. But on top of that, you can buy seedlings, you can buy seeds, you can buy fruit trees, anything that's actual food that's not cooked, you can buy it. So the seeds are considered food, the trees are considered food. You could start a garden. The only thing you got to come out of pocket for is maybe some soil compost, and if you fertilize. So, just the motivation is getting people to garden and realize that if, there are certain things that we will need to go to the grocery store to get. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that we don't need the grocery store for at all. We have the farmers markets, we have backyards, we have front yards, we have balconies, we have 5-gallon buckets, all types of things that we can start gardens with.
Yep. I love it. And even, if you're saving $10 a week, that's a cable bill.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. My other question was going to be, how did you learn? But I think you answered it. You learned like I did, really.
Yeah, you know what? To add to that, I learned from my father, but I'm a nut when it comes to, like, when I say literally, I've probably listened to almost 2,000 or 3,000 garden podcast episodes. I have my own garden podcast, but I've listened to every episode of the Joe Gardner podcast, every episode of the Black and the Gardener podcast, every episode of the Urban Farmer podcast. And I've listened to them multiple times, and the list goes on. There's so many different podcasts, YouTube videos, and different things like that, that there's no excuse for not knowing how to garden. I mean, I understand people might feel that they don't have the space and things, but I mean, not just shamelessly plugging my podcast, which is called the G Talk Garden Podcast, but
I want to shamelessly plug it for you though, because I was going to ask you, G Talk podcast.
Yeah, it's G Talk Garden Podcast. But even with that out of the picture, there's so many outlets for people to learn from. Like, I even talk to my father, and there's things that he learns from me. So if you know one thing, you can make a difference and make a change, because you don't have to know everything. All you need to know is something that the person in front of you doesn't know for you to change their life.
Yeah, that's I love everything you're saying. You and I would love to meet up with you and show you what we're doing too, and get some advice from you.
Okay,
but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
What would you say like your mission is? Like, what are you trying to do? I think you kind of summed it up as get a garden in everybody's yard. Is that?
That's part of the mission, but I think more so, I'll explain the program we have going on in a second, but the mission more so is one, and not necessarily a garden in everybody's yard, but for people to realize that gardening is not as it does take some learning. There's certain things that you have to actually study and research to grow. And there's certain things that you can't grow in certain areas. But the mission is to let people know that you can garden. You know, there's so many people that again feel they don't have the space, the funds, the time. You know, I stress to the people that are on government assistance not to make them feel bad, but to make you realize that you could be the one with the biggest garden on the block. You could be the one, you know, and not necessarily just taking advantage of it, but you have to take advantage of the things you get. So if you're getting food stamps, and back to the double bucks at the farmer's market, if you know you only eat $100 worth of produce every week, and you go to the farmer's market all throughout the summer, and you only consume that $100 worth of produce, okay, so now you're spending $50. You have another $50 worth of food stamps left. You can start you a garden because you can go buy 3 or 4 fruit trees at Myers. I bought 4 fruit trees, $16 a piece at Myers. So if this week you decide to, okay, I've only spent $50, but I got $100 worth of produce, I'm gonna take the other $50 and buy me a couple seedlings, couple packs of seeds, couple fruit trees. Now all you have to do is spend $5 or $10 on a bag of soil or compost, and you started a garden. So it's basically, I mean, I'll say this, I talk a lot, but the goal is to show people that it's not as far away from the regular everyday person as a lot of us think.
So is that the program you were talking about describing, or is there a program that you're running that you were talking about something different?
Well, that's the gist of why I'm doing the program. The program is actually, I don't know if you guys, well, I don't know if you know what a CSA is.
I do.
Okay, so.
Please describe it actually, because you used an acronym.
Okay.
So
CSA is the acronym is Community Supported Agriculture. And I'll just put it in terms of me. You guys that are watching or listening would pay into me as a farmer at the beginning of the season at whatever cost it is. Throughout the season, you would get produce each time we harvest at certain intervals. Now, what my program is and what we're actually going to do is called, we're coining it as Community Driven Agriculture, because it's not, we're going to do it with the CSA model, but say, for instance, I'm going to pay into the farmer. I'm going to give some money to the farmer so that somebody else that may not be able to get fresh produce will get the produce instead of getting it for myself. So we're doing it CDA style. So that's a new term. I hope.
I like it.
I think I coined it. If somebody else did, I'm snatching it. But it's the same gist of the CSA. But we've gotten donations from people, and what we're doing with those donations is building up the farm. We're going to make sure that this season, because it's our first season doing this, we're going to feed 5 families. And with that, it's not about giving these families the food. The food is kind of like the candy. We're going to give them fresh produce, and they're going to, hopefully they have an interest in gardening. And then we're going to give them free garden education, as well as we're going to build them a mobile garden box. So if they stay in an apartment complex, we can put this box on their balcony or outside of their place where they stay. And if they move into a home, they can take it with them. It's going to have wheels on it. It's going to have a trellis on the back. And even if you live in a home, you might not own that home. So you might be like, I don't want to garden because I don't want to do all this work. And boom, now I've started this garden and I move and I got a new house. I have to start over again. You can take it with you. Roll it up onto your truck, roll it up onto the moving truck, a trailer, or whatever. But the goal is to, this season, feed 5 families, teach those 5 families how to garden, make sure those 5 families have a garden before the end of the season. So now they know how to grow some of their own food. And that's basically the root, where we're calling it the ROTV Community Driven Ag Box Program. So that's basically the gist of what we have going on for this summer.
All right. So, how can we support you? How can people still donate? Do you need um, seeds? Do you need anything like that?
I might be good on seeds. People can always donate. I can. My Cash App is ROTV Urban Garden. I think it's. I'll have to check it in a second. I think it's Urban Garden or either Urban Gardens, and we're always taking donations. But again, we're going to be looking for volunteers as well. And right now, we only have one official family that we are actually working with. So I need four more families. That's one thing that we need to actually do by the end of March is find four more families. And what we're looking for in families is not necessarily people that are on assistance, but people that want to learn how to garden. I do want to be able to help people that are less fortunate and maybe on food stamps or government assistance. But there's a few families that I'm looking at already. Um, but again, we want to be able to help five families. There's only one so far that is official, and the rest is kind of up for grabs. So if you guys know anybody or you yourself might be somebody that needs to learn how to garden and might just enjoy some fresh produce throughout the season, you know, we you can email me or contact Jerry and he can get into contact with me. And like I said, we have to get these families locked in by the end of March.
Okay. Is it anywhere in the city, or you want them on a particular, like, what side of town you on?
Well, I actually live northwest. The garden is going to be on the south side, and
Okay.
for me, it's Lansing, East Lansing. It really doesn't matter, but I want to be able to make it accessible to where they can come back and forth, as far as coming out to the garden when we have the volunteer days to be able to see what it is that we're doing and things like that. So I don't want to have anybody too far where they're like, I can't get to the garden, or, it's too hard for us to get them the produce. So, I mean, Lansing, East Lansing, Holt, surrounding areas like that is fine.
Okay. This is an awesome project. I like how you're, kind of strategizing, because probably after five, if you could get one of them to just do five themselves, you could just
Right.
build this whole out.
And you know what's crazy? That is in a sense the goal, because like I say, you don't have to know everything. If I have a group on Facebook called the Garden Gang, and we had a young lady that just asked a question. I, I have a garden podcast. I have a Facebook page. We got all these different things, but the question she asked, I had no question. I had no way to answer that question. I didn't know. Somebody else chimed in, answered, and it was funny because they said, "This is the only thing I know about gardening, and I'm going to give my info." And that was exactly what the young lady needed. So if I have one piece of information that you need, or vice versa, you don't have to know everything. So if I can teach you something and then you teach somebody else, and I'll just give a quick example. Like, I drive for Kata. I listen to hip hop music while I'm driving all the time. But at the same time, that's how I get my garden podcast. And I listen to my garden podcast while I'm driving. I have young kids from MSU. I have older ladies, older gentlemen's kids all the time asking questions while I'm driving, or either chiming in saying, "Have you tried this?" I had a young lady that she just thought she was bothering me because I was listening to a podcast, she heard it, and she got to talking about um something local. I haven't found it yet, but she said there's a greenhouse that does co-op where you can go in and start your seeds in this greenhouse. And she couldn't think of the name, and I haven't found it yet, but that was some information that I never knew about. So now I have something that if I find that piece of information that she was explaining, now I can pass that information on, because that's another thing. People might want to start their own seeds and feel that, okay, I don't have the space to start I got space for a garden, but I don't have space to start my seeds. So I'm not going to garden. So, just finding little bits of information or getting little bits of information from people and either passing it on or them passing it on, it's like a wildfire.
Yeah, I like it a lot. So, what's something you do every damn day to push your needle forward?
Something I do every damn day. Well, I would say listen to a garden podcast, just about
Yeah.
either a garden podcast or a some type of YouTube video. Some bit of information that way I'm learning something new because like I say, I drive for cattle, so I never know. I get all types of info from passengers, but a lot of times I get questions from passengers that I might not have the answer to. And the worst thing for me is somebody looking at you thinking, okay, I heard him listening to this. Let me ask him this. Oh, he doesn't have the answer. I'm not going to ask nobody else. I'm not even going to worry. I don't want to have that happen. So
Hmm.
I don't need to know everything, but I want to know enough to the point where somebody walks up to me and asks me a question. I can either give them the answer or point them in the right direction to have their question answered.
That's awesome. Omar's over there. Now I made the connection on how you know Omar because of AOTA and
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jose and all that. So he said you're the best bus driver in the city.
He ain't never been on my bus.
Hey, you ever won that best bus driver from
You
City
know what?
Falls?
I have it, and it's been the same guy for a few years, and I told him I'm trying to be like him when I grow up.
Who was that?
And not what's crazy is now I can't think of his name, and I know exactly who it is.
Lamar?
No, not look. I think he's Bennett. He's a great driver too. I love that. I love that guy. He's given me some information just overhearing him talk through about like Roth IRAs and different things like that. So
Yeah.
he's a great driver, and he's very good guy. And I can't think. He does the boxing, or he used to do the boxing things around
Ron
here.
DeLeon?
Ron DeLeon, that's his name.
Yeah.
He's been the favorite driver for the past few years, and I told him I'm trying to be like him when I grow up.
I grew up with both those guys. So
Yeah,
that's funny.
both real good guys.
Yeah. Um, so we daisy chain our shows together, and yesterday on the show I had Ashiki Guy. You know her?
No, I don't.
She's from Kalamazoo too, I think. But anyways, she started, or she's one of the co-founders of Black Wall Street of Lansing and We the Free People.
Uh huh.
And I pass a question from her to you. And that question that she wanted me to ask you is, what was the moment you knew you had to go do this? And I know you it was before COVID. I mean, COVID might have exemplified it, but what was that
Yeah.
moment?
You know what? In all honesty, again, this when I started the garden, it was for me and my wife. Um, and we were interviewed by the city of Lansing when they did the My Kind of People campaign.
Yeah.
And for some odd reason, people like I said, the garden at home at that time when we were interviewed was probably 20 by 25. So it's a small home garden. And people were just commenting and asking questions. And I had a gentleman, the pastor from City Life Church, and was like, well, we can send people out to volunteer and all of these different things. And then he was like, well, what do you need? We can send you a check. So they sent me a check. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, this food is for me and my wife. I don't have, I didn't have a need for it. But at the same time, he wouldn't not let me take the money. So I was thinking like, okay, what can I do? And I thought I was telling my wife, and I had been talking to my aunt and uncle about using some of their property. And I was like, well, we already have the videos and things that we do. So, okay, we're already teaching people, but okay, how would it work if we decided to say, okay, let's give some people some food and teach them how to garden for free? And then over the time, it was like, at that point, it was like, okay, I have people giving me money just because I spoke about gardening. And it seems like, or I don't even know, because with him being a pastor, he might have seen something that I didn't see at the time, but neither here nor there. It was to a point where it was like, okay, I have people that want to give. So why wouldn't I do the same thing with this being something so simple to pass on?
Yeah. I love it. I just in 2020 I got into Octavius Butler. Do you know who that is?
I heard of
Um,
the name, but I'm not 100% sure.
she's an author that writes Afrofuturism, and
Oh,
it's kind of the breakdown of the systems in California, and everybody was gardening, and they all had to learn how to grow their own food just to survive. I mean, money wasn't an option anymore,
okay.
and yeah, that book motivates me a lot, especially in the urban farming space and what I want to do, which is very similar to what you're doing. So I would
Yeah,
love to talk to you more.
I'm
I'd
gonna have
love.
to check those books out.
Um, so tomorrow on the show, this is going to be completely different than what we've been talking about, but we'll come back to you in a minute. I've got a guy. His name is Peter Reeves, and he has a company called Sumac Life.
Hmm.
And so if you have like an Apple Watch, um, it can detect your balance, like if your balance is starting to get thrown off,
Uh-huh.
and it's meant to prevent falls in the elderly or people that just changed medications, seeing if they're more susceptible for a fall. What question would you like me to ask Peter? Like Ashiki passed you one, and now I would like you to pass Peter one. Um, what comes to mind? And think of him like just a random person, though, like if just a
Um,
question like what she said.
okay. Um, how do you? I would ask, how would he see? How does he see this expanding? And since you said Apple Watch, could he see himself partnering with a company like Apple or Samsung with the project that he's working on?
I will ask him that question. So now, I always turn the question back around, but you're not. It's not the same thing. Well, could you see Apple Watch being used for gardening? Do you use it for gardening?
I don't, but with the technology that they have in the watches, I could. I mean, and this is just me, and if they want to use the idea, it will be fine. There, I mean, we exercise with our watches, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch or a Fitbit. I don't see why we can't necessarily put in apps that would actually like measure foot. I mean, they already measure footsteps, but if I'm, say, for instance, I want to measure out a garden row that's 40 feet, and I want to say, boom, I don't have a ruler to go and measure how many spaces. So if it was something on the watch to actually take steps and be like, okay, I've walked 2 feet, boom, I got to plant this, boom, 2 more feet, I got to plant this, without having to actually go into or pulling anything out of it, just something where it can say, okay, Allan, you've walked 2 feet, or
Yeah.
Jerry, you've walked 2 feet. So now you know. I mean, it could be something where we could set it into an app or something like that. But that, I mean, I think that'd be something interesting because um
Hey,
even
oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say even outside of garden, say for instance, you dropped something, you might have dropped something, and if it can detect something like that, where okay, you dropped something 30 feet back, and now okay, you got your watch on, and it can tell you, okay, noise was detected 30 feet back, or something of that nature. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of technical things that could probably be done, and there are probably already apps for it. I just have to find them and see if it's possible.
Well, I was going to say to you that we don't have to give this idea away to Apple. We've got some ag tech companies in our ecosystem. Uproot Technology works out of the Fledge, but MSU's right there. And we
Oh yeah.
got all the competency we need in Lansing to build whatever we want. So let's build it here, and
Oh yeah.
then they can buy it from us.
Right, we can make that happen.
Yeah. So now we got two things to talk about.
Right.
Um, we just crossed our halfway point. My goal is to do 365 unique entrepreneurs interviews 365 days in a row. So we're at your episode 186. We've got about 179 more to go.
Oh wow.
Um, when we crossed over the hump, I added a question to the show. And my question for you is, and it's two parts. What is happiness to you? And are you happy?
Um, to be real technical, I would say life in general, because I look at it like this. We complain about a lot of things that we can't change. So
Mhm.
why are we complaining about it? We also complain about a lot of things that we can change. So why are we complaining about it? And if you have control over it and you're not changing it, it's on you or me, and vice versa. So being happy just in general is realizing that anything that I want to do, I can make it happen myself, or I can find the resources to make it happen. So in a certain sense, I mean, I would say yes, I'm happy, because right now there's things that I didn't think I was going to be able to do, as far as helping people out. Like, just say, for instance, funds in the space. I didn't think I'm like, okay, this garden's going to cost too much money. Boom, I can't do it. So now, just opening my mouth and people seeing what it is that I'm doing, they're helping out. And on top of that, it makes me happy to bless other people. So I would say, yeah, I'm happy. And just being able to realize that we have control of our happiness is happiness.
Yeah. Happiness is a mindset, you choose it, I think, sometimes.
Right.
So, did we forget to talk about anything? We promoted, or we talked about the podcast. We talked about the Garden Gang on Facebook. We talked about the program with
Yeah.
the 5 families and what you need there. We don't have your PayPal yet, but we can do that um, after the show too. Make sure I get it so that people know where to donate.
Okay.
Anything else you wanted to promote or talk about?
Um, that's really right now. I think that's all I have going on. I mean, again, uh, we will need volunteers. Again, the donations are. I mean, we have funding. As of now, we were able to get a grant, but donations are always welcome. So, and also, like I said, we still need more families. There's only one official family so far that I've spoken with, and I would like to see if I can contact with 4 more. Well, I would say 3, because I do have a church that is close to the actual garden that is going to let us use some parking spaces, and I told them that since they are going to let us use parking spaces on their property, that I would let them choose a family from their church. So
Okay.
3 more families that are that we're looking for, and we just that's probably about it.
All right. You mind taking us out with something?
um I'll just say grow something, no matter what it is. I mean, if you can go to the farm supermarket, buy a $2 or $3 basil plant, put it in a larger pot, put it on your windowsill, water it, you start it.
You know, uh, something we didn't talk about. We might want to for a second. You can save money gardening, but your mental health in gardening and farming gets really. I mean, your mindfulness, your meditation, and then your physical health. If you're not eating chips and pop every day, and you're eating an apple and water once in a while.
you,
What are your? Yeah.
I had headaches before I started my first garden. Well, my first personal garden here. When I say headaches, I mean wake up headaches, go to bed headaches, outside headaches, inside headaches. No matter what I was doing at that time, the only thing that would stop my headaches was thinking about my wife walking down the aisle when we got married. They would ease the headaches, but then the headaches got so bad that there was nothing that would stop the headaches. Unintentionally, starting the garden, I dug up the 10 by 10 space by myself. That first day, within the first couple hours of me working, I noticed my headache was gone. And not putting 2 and 2 together, I'm just, okay, headache's gone. It leaves throughout the day anyway. So boom, I'm cool. Go back in the house 3-4 hours after the headache was back. Next day, go outside, garden, couple hours into, not even a couple hours, maybe 30-40 minutes into finishing digging it up, headache was gone. So I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I wonder. So I looked it up. Simply being outside in nature will ease stress, relieve headaches. It's so many other things, but like you say, the mental health, just the fact of me digging in the soil, there's chemicals that come out of the soil and interact with the chemicals that come off of our bodies and inside of our bodies, where now you've released some stress. And you don't have to have a garden to realize that. Go take a walk in the park. Go take a walk through forest. Well, not a forest preserve. We don't have those here. But go take a walk through the trails and the different parks and different things that we have. And if you just so happen to have a little bit of space, make a garden. But those type of things are mentally easing, and actually physically easing. Because even in that same instance, I was thinking my body would be in so much pain by digging and shoveling for 3 or 4 hours throughout the day. Even after that, I didn't have any body pain.
Yeah.
So that gardening alone, going outside, my wife doesn't like me doing this, but walking outside with no shoes on in the grass,
yeah.
it helps. So a lot of times I will walk through my garden without shoes. Like if I'm not actually doing any work, if I'm checking around, I'll walk outside with my flip-flops on, take them off once I get into the grass, walk around the garden. And it's actually relaxing. And just standing on the ground or the soil in the grass alone, if you stand there or walk around for a few seconds, you can actually feel the stuff. I don't know what I did a speech on this and I never got to finish it when I was going to LCC. And it actually, you can feel the release in your body when things start to break down, and it's very beneficial. So you don't even have to eat the vegetables to get the blessings from being a gardener. So that's another reason. If even if you don't like vegetables, start a garden and sell your vegetables. You're making money and you're relieving stress at the same time.
Man, I want to talk to you for another hour.
We can do it again.
All right. We do need to do that, but we got to meet up too. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So grow something, get outside. We're going to go out with that. Every damn day, every day at 2 p.m. We will see you later. Stick with me for 1 second, Allan.
All right.